Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Embroidery Sundays. Today what I want to do is show you my unboxed hat hoop from Brother, and I'm going to give you a quick start hat hoop 101 tutorial. The first thing is I want to show you what comes in the box, and the reason why I'm showing you this is because if you're one of those people who takes the stuff out, puts the box away somewhere inconvenient, or worse, throws it to the curb, make sure you have everything out of the box first. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is these two screwdrivers were actually underneath the foam in the box, and I totally would have missed it if I didn't double check to make sure I had everything out of the box. So make sure you have these two screwdrivers, because they're very handy and specific to this hat hoop to tighten it and loosen it to set it up. Okay, so you do need these. Another small piece that's in the box is this little pad, and you use this pad to create space between the base of the machine and the bottom of the hoop when it's on. So you need this little, it looks like a little, actually a little piece of magnet. You need this. Also, there is a plastic brim protector in the box, and my big tip for that is make sure you put it somewhere where it doesn't get misplaced, because I've already lost mine. But basically I can show you here, it's a little wedge shaped piece of clear plastic, and you actually snap it onto the brim of your hat to protect it while you're embroidering. Personally, I used it the first time and then I didn't use it anymore, and I put it somewhere super safe where I have no idea where it is. So if you want to protect your brims with the little brim protector, make sure you keep it someplace where you can find it, because it's clear and it's really easy to misplace. Ask me how I know. Okay, so those are the little pieces. The little pad, the Allen screwdrivers, and the instruction manual. And then the hoop itself comes, there are really 4 parts in the box. We have the cap frame driver, which is what gets attached to the actual embroidery machine. We have the mounting jig, and this is what we attach the hoop to first to get the hat in the hoop properly and get it all nice and centered. And then we have the hat hoop itself. And you'll see, I was kind of surprised when I opened this box, because you may notice that there's a little dial here. It's got a lock, you know, you can turn the lock on and off to get this part of the hoop on and off. And I was really expecting to see a metal piece that sort of pivoted and slid in place to hold your brim, but instead now there is this separate piece. So I'm going to show you how to use all of this right now. The first thing is you're going to want to attach your mounting jig to either a tabletop surface. It has a little thing where you attach it here and you loosen this, clamp it on, and then tighten it. If you got the cabinet from Brother, then in that box there was a piece that you actually use to mount the mounting jig onto. And I want to show you that. So this gets to be a little bit parts and pieces here. So this is my instruction sheet from my cabinet, and I kept it because I noticed down here there was information about this part here, and it screws into the back corner of the table, so then you can attach the mounting jig to it. So I don't have to attach my mounting jig to the edge of the table. If you didn't get the cabinet and you don't have this metal piece that goes on to the cabinet, put it on the edge of a table. Alright, so you can see I mounted this piece onto the back left-hand side of my table, and it goes on with 4 screws. Alright, so if you have this piece, attach it to the table. And I just want to point out that depending on how your work surface is set up, this can actually go on the other side too. If I turn this around, you can see that I have the same 4 holes over here, so you can decide which side of the machine is more convenient for you to have that mounting jig handy. Okay, so mine is on the left back side of my table. You know, here's my machine. Okay, and the mounting jig slides right on. I'm going to loosen this up a little bit more. You slide it onto this piece of metal, make sure it's flush, and then just tighten that back up, and you've got your mounting jig all ready to use. And this is really convenient for me because I have this, and then when my machine is turned to the position in which I'm going to be embroidering, you know, in the front of the machine here, then the mounting jig is out of the way. The next step is to take off the embroidery frame holder, and in this case I have the embroidery holder E on my machine because I was using the little hoops to embroider a number on the back of my hat I did. So I am just going to loosen these screws and take them off. Okay, and in either case, if you have the embroidery frame holder A or the embroidery frame holder E, it doesn't matter, it has to come off because we're going to be attaching the one for the hat in a minute. So you just lift this up after you take the screws and just take that off. Okay, and then it's always important, put the screws back in the holes because that way you won't lose them while you're not using this frame holder. So I'm just going to go ahead and screw the screws back into the frame holder to keep them from getting lost. Okay, so I'm going to turn the machine on, and I'm going to just set the carriage of the embroidery unit to its start position. Okay. Okay, we're going to attach the cap frame driver now. Okay, so again, the first step is I need to remove these screws. I'm just going to remove these screws for a second. And then I also want to show you there's 2 other screws on the cap frame driver. They're under here. And these actually tighten down after you get it onto the frame. After you attach it, these hold the bottom of the frame holder. I'll show that to you in a minute. But basically what they're going to do is they're going to slide right into these little V grooves right here. Alright, so this is the machine bed area. We're going to pass the cap frame driver right through there like this. Okay. Okay, so these little screws down here go right into these little metal V-shaped grooves. I'm just going to loosen it enough so they go in. And when they're pushed back all the way, I'm going to tighten those. Okay, that secures the cap frame driver to the machine. Okay, so the next step is we are going to take the mounting plate of the cap frame driver and we're going to seat it on the 2 pins on either side of the mounting frame plate of the carriage here. And you can see the little pin there, and there's one on the opposite side. Okay, so get those in the holes. And then we're going to put the screws back in. So I'm going to screw one on this side and one on the opposite side. So, you know, just so you can see that. So here's the screw right here, and here's my other screw right here. I've got them both screwed down tight. Okay. Alright, and then what I want to do here is I'm just going to loosen these lower screws a little bit. You want to make sure that this is completely inserted. So I'm going to push this, I'm going to push the cap frame driver towards the machine and just tighten these down, these lower screws. That way we're sure that the cap frame driver is in the right position. Alright, so I've got that nice and secure. You can see nothing's moving. And these are tightened, and the cap frame driver is all the way flush against the machine. Alright, so now I'm going to show you two adjustments you need to make to the cap frame driver before you use it. And we're going to be using these two hex screwdrivers. There's a medium, or a 2.5 millimeter, and a 3 millimeter. Okay, so we're going to use the medium one first. There's two screws on this L-shaped bracket right here. We are going to lefty loosen them. So I'm going to turn this left, and I'm going to loosen them maybe a half turn. You don't want to loosen them too much, because if they fall out, it's very hard to put them back in. So I'm just going to loosen that. And the purpose of this is to be able to lower this L-shaped bracket so it's touching the machine bed. So I'm just going to gently push down on it so that it's touching the machine bed, and then I'm going to tighten those two screws. Okay, it's really a fine adjustment here, but I'm just going to go ahead and tighten. Now the cool thing about this is you only need to do this once if you're using the same cap frame driver with the same machine. You don't have to do this every time you use your hat hoop, but just in this initial setup. Alright, so now the L-shaped bracket is touching the bed of the machine. Okay, and I've tightened down my two screws. The next thing we're going to want to do is make some space between the cap frame driver and the bed of the machine, because right now it's pushing right against there. So there are actually 4 screws inside here. There's 2 on the left and 2 on the right. I'm going to use the large Allen screwdriver here to lefty loosen all 4 of these screws. And really, I'm just unscrewing them like a half a turn just to loosen them. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use that little pad, and we're going to insert it between the ring and the bed of the machine. What this is going to do is it's going to create the amount of space that is needed for the driver to work properly. So I've got that inserted. Okay. While it's inserted, I'm going to tighten those 4 screws. And this is giving the clearance for the ring to not be brushing against the bed of the machine. Alright, so I've got those tightened. Then I can remove the pad. Alright, so I've just got enough clearance for it to be able to move around. So the last thing we're going to set up on the machine itself before we start working with the hat hoop is the little needle plate spacer. It's a little piece of plastic. This came with the accessories of the actual machine. I'm going to just snap that in. Alright, so now the machine is set up and we're ready to hoop our hat. Let's look at the hat hoop itself. You can see that there's a lock and unlock switch here. So if I put it on unlock, I can then remove the front part of this hat hoop. So I'm going to leave this on the table for now. Let's put this on the mounting jig. Okay, so I'm going to hold the hoop right on these 2 metal pieces that stick out. I'm going to slide the hat hoop back until it clips into these little rollers right here. Okay, so you can see now that's firmly attached. The next thing I want you to notice is, see this little ridge of little spiky things? That's going to help hold our stabilizer. The stabilizer goes underneath the grooves here. So So I'm just going to slide that under there, and then I'm going to just sort of pierce the tearaway stabilizer so that those little teeth are holding the stabilizer in place for me while I hoop the hat. And really, I don't even need that big of a piece. I'm going to trim it. There. Now let's get the hat in the hoop. Alright, so we are going to gently squeeze the brim of the hat to give it that U shape. We're going to take the upper portion of the frame and we're going to put it over the brim like this. Now you'll notice there are some grooves at the center of the upper part of the frame. This center groove should line up with the center of the hat. And if you're working with a hat like this, there is a seam there. If you don't have a seam, just make a mark where the center of the front of the cap is. And I'm just going to line up these plastic teeth with the base of the cap, or the seam between the brim and the cap. Okay? And notice that the pins are pointing towards me or pointing towards the hat. Alright, so now let's go back to the mounting jig. We're going to insert these tabs, these little metal tabs, into the lower frame. Alright, so let's go back over to the mounting jig. And just make sure my sweat band is pulled away. Okay, that's the first thing I want to do here. I'm going to make sure that the lower part of my hoop is locked now. So I'm going to put it in the locked position. And I'm just going to seat those tabs on either side of the hoop into the insert. And as I push it down, okay, you can see they're in the tabs. As I push it down, you're going to hear some clicking. Alright, and that's basically the hat tightening down. Now notice when we did that, we moved the center off of the center of the cap. So if that happens, you can put your hat hoop, unlock it and just shift it back over while it's on the mounting jig. Okay? So you want to make sure this is laying nice and smooth and flat, that the center groove is in the center of the cap. Okay, and that it's very smooth and there's no extra fabric there. And then push it back down to tighten it. After you lock it, make sure it's tight. Okay, and you can see that the teeth, the little plastic teeth, are right along the seam between the cap and the brim, all the way. Okay, and again, if it's not following, unlock it and get it into position. Okay. Alright, so there I have my hat hooped. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the whole hat hoop off of the mounting jig. Okay, and it just comes right off. Let's take a peek inside, and you can see that the stabilizer is in perfect position. My sweatband is out of the way. Okay, so I'm just going to pick the back of the hat up to show you the inside of the frame here. When you took the pieces apart, there were two little metal clips. They look like binder clips, and they go right here, here, and here. I forgot to mention this when I was taking the stuff apart. You can just put those clips back in place if you'd like to add a little more security to your hat. Okay, so they clip on right onto the side there like that, on either side. And again, just make sure there's no extra fabric, and just clip those clips in place. Alright, so now we're ready to attach the hat hoop to the cap frame driver. So let's go back to the machine. Alright, so I'm going to take the hat hoop and I'm just going to put it between the needle and the bed of the machine like this. And you want to be careful that the brim and the hoop do not hit your needle right here. And then I'm going to push the frame back until it snaps in place, and basically the hoop is sliding under those rollers, and they're the exact same rollers that are on the mounting jig. So if I push this, you can feel it and hear it click in place. Okay, so now you can see that my hat hoop is securely on the cap frame driver. Alright, I just want to show you from the front side, or from inside the brim. You can see that the cap is attached right here under those little rollers, and there's one on either side there. That's how it looks from that vantage point. The next thing I'm going to do is turn the machine on. Okay, so it sets us up in the start position. Now I want to show you on the screen what happens when you load a design for a cap. Okay, so I'm going to select my USB, and then I'm going to select my hat design. Alright, so you can see when you pick the design for your hat, it's right side up. When I set it, and I go to embroidery, watch what happens. Notice the design is now upside down in the correct position to embroider on the hat, because if we look at the hat is actually upside down in the hoop. Okay, so it flips the design for you, so you don't have to worry about it. I'm going to unlock the machine, and notice that my needle is not in the center, so I can actually use the arrows on the machine to get that needle so that it's centered right on the center seam of that hat. Okay, so see how I move that? Alright, and then I've got my first color in, so I can press start, and here we go. Let's take the hat out of the hoop. The first step is we want to unlock, and then we can lift off the upper part of the cap frame. Then I can take it out. Look how lovely. Alright, so I'm super excited about this hat hoop. It's very easy to use. After you take some time to set it up properly, you don't have to do the setup every time you use your hat hoop. So take your time, make sure first that the cap frame is against the machine, and then use the little pad to make sure the ring is not rubbing up against the bed of the machine. So those are two important things you want to do when you set up your cap frame. Once you do it, you don't have to do it next time. So you'll notice I have a little 7 on the back of my hat, and this is actually my daughter's number. So next week, join me and I'll show you how to add customizing details to your hats I think it's really cool if you're making hats for a team, you can add their number either on the back or on the side. So I'm going to show you how to do that next week, and we'll be taking advantage of those little mini hoops that come with the Brother PRS 100 to be able to do that. So I hope you enjoyed this little Hat Hoop 101, a quick start guide to using your hat hoop for the Brother PRS 100. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below and I will help you. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.